Hi again, everyone. Steve Cashel here with Dr. Brian Cole, head team physician with the Chicago Bulls, orthopedic surgeon, Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Welcome to another Sports Medicine Weekly podcast. Before we introduce our guest, JRF Ortho partners with orthopedic surgeons to improve the quality of life of patients by enabling them to have an active life through the generous gift of cartilage and ligament transplantation. Please go to jrfortho.org to learn more or sign up to be a tissue donor at donatelife.net. Dr. Cole, how are you?
Steve, I'm doing great. Great to join you on this podcast. I'm excited about the topic, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I got a great guest for you Wolverine fans out there. We're looking at Mr. Mike Martin as we see him through our Zoom call here, and you're able to listen to Mike. He played defensive end for the University of Michigan 2008-2011, selected by the Tennessee Titans, third round of the 2012 NFL Draft. And then he underwent surgery, repair a shoulder injury that he sustained during his freshman year. Want to talk about that, since that's what our show's all about. Mike is a former NFL player, went on to the NFL, then Tennessee Titans and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now works for NFL players in their wealth management space, and that is outstanding. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly.
Yeah, it's great to be here, guys. I'm excited. Dr. Cole's been a very good friend of mine and has taken care of me over the years, so I'm glad to be here.
Good deal. So, hey, take me back. I also understand you were a two-time state wrestling champion, two-time shot put champion in high school. Since this is a sports medicine injury show, when do you remember your first injury of any significance, Mike?
Oh, man. I mean, it's really been just a lifetime of dealing with nicks and bruises and all that kind of stuff. But really, in college, that shoulder injury that you referred to was the first injury that stopped me in my tracks when I had to come off the field and my shoulder was out of place and Dr. Miller had to pop it back in, and then I had to go back into the game because the guy that was behind me wasn't going to get the job done. So there really wasn't a choice, and just that mentality of going through pain and dealing with it and knowing how to manage it, I learned to do very well, and it gave me a great career.
You know, Mike, it's interesting. Shoulder dislocations, it's very rare that a first dislocation you could put back in place on the sideline and get the player back in, and the only place you can ever do that is football. I'm just telling you, there isn't I've learned over the years of just managing different types of athletes that I can't, maybe hockey. You could do it in a hockey player. That's possible. But generally speaking, that's pretty impressive. I think that just speaks to your tenacity, because that's not a common thing. I think about through your career in the NFL. Can you think of any other guy who's dislocated their shoulder, gone back and played right after?
Yeah, I mean, not off the top of my head, but I broke a finger in the NFL. This was right during like a 2-minute drill right there in the red zone against Tampa Bay, and I wasn't going to come out the game. So I'm like, hey, I got 9 other fingers. I got to keep going. So that's just kind of the deal.
That's why you got 2 shoulders too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Again, visit with Mike Martin. Mike, talk about a little bit about managing injury and returning to play. When you were going through your football career and also as a wrestler, and hopefully there were no injuries with the shot put, but you never know with these things. Is it a fragile thing for you, or as you said, you broke a finger during an NFL game, you say, I'm not coming out? I mean, take us through the mindset of a player, because you don't want to leave the field because you don't want to get replaced, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many snaps in the game. You think about if you put all the plays that you play together in a season, every football snap averages, 6 seconds, 5 to 8 seconds. And you put that all together in one season, you're playing like an hour worth of football, and it's not much. So you work all year round in the fall and all year 24/7, 365 for an hour's worth of play, really. So you don't want to miss any snaps. And you think, when I talk to guys, it's not if I'm going to get hurt, it's when I get hurt. So when you get hurt, how are you going to deal with it mentally? There's a difference between injury and being banged up, because everyone's going to be banged up. So you just got to have that mentality, especially when you get in the NFL. I mean, in college, there's a bit of a spread on talent. I mean, if you're the guy, you really usually don't have 2 or 3 guys that can come in and play at the same level. But in the NFL, that's a different story. So if you're out and the other guy's doing well and your contract is maybe you're not, a guy that's getting paid a high amount or can be replaced, then they're going to keep that guy in there because they're not going to fix something that's not broken. So, yeah, it's a business when you get to that level, but it's a blessing as well. So you just got to take it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business, but it's such a different kind of business because you just have to go play. And if you can't play, you're not working. And, when you think about it, the average career, I don't know, we're talking probably 5 years. I mean, it's crazy just because the injury rate is so high.
I think it's less than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it may be. Mike, were you like 3.5?
It was 2.5. Yeah,
wow.
I played 5. Yep.
Yeah, and right. So you shouldn't feel badly. You step beyond the averages, and it's and I'm sure you don't. I mean, it's one of those things is you put your body at risk every time you go out and play every single weekend. And that's one of the that's what's very unique about the NFL compared to other sports. We get career-ending injuries every single weekend, and it's like you say, it's not if, it's when. And, I guess one thing I'm curious to know, when you think back to your NFL days and your days now, what do you miss the most? What's been the biggest change?
I miss that preparation for the game and that teammate atmosphere, because that's something that's really hard to replicate once you move beyond. And business is one of those things that, for me, that I found that is the closest thing to that, because in business, everyone's got to be doing their job at a high level. If you got one chink in the chain that's not getting it done, then everything can fall apart. The deal won't go through. Everyone's got to be on their A game, and the competition is higher than anything, especially here in these United States. So I love that. I miss that about football, but as you guys referenced to in the wealth management space, it's given me that ability to still be around the sport of football and be around that teammate atmosphere, but also bring in the advice and the knowledge that guys need and that people need in general. It's not just professional athletes, so we can get into that, but it's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, I would say pretty much hands down, when I speak to guys who I've also become friends with, it's the camaraderie they miss the most. Yeah. And the accountability. And I think you're seeing in your post NFL life what it's like to be in business and to also work with former players. I'm sure it gets highlighted even more.
Amen to that. And I'll add
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say that what you just said about the accountability. I mean, you learn in business and as you go on through life that if you just say you do what you say you're going to do, then you'll be very successful. I mean, the keys to success aren't complicated. It ain't rocket science, but a lot of people struggle with that. And in football and sports, that camaraderie that you said, if you're not doing your job, if you're not where you need to be during a certain play or whatever, you're going to get your ass ripped by your teammate, and you're going to hear it on the sideline. And then you're going to hear it in the film room later on that week, and they're going to replay it over and over. And you're going to be sitting there just like, man, I'm going to make sure I'm on point next time because I don't want that to happen again. And in business, if you could take that same mentality, because a lot of people, they fall through the cracks on that and say, hey, I'll call you on Monday at 8, and they don't call you. And it's like these little things that you're like, okay, well, then you probably won't do business with that person. And then so there's a lot of translation, and that's why I love it, because if you bring your A game and you work hard, good things happen.
Can visit with Mike Martin, former NFL player. And Mike, I understand Dr. Cole did a cartilage transplant for you. Was that why you were with the Titans? So take us through that injury and then how you found Dr. Cole.
Yeah, so the progression of that was my second year in the NFL. I had a bucket tear, meniscal bucket tear, and Dr. Burton Elrod, he was with the Tennessee Titans. I believe he's still there. He performed the meniscectomy on me, and they cut it out, and I got back to feeling pretty good pretty quickly, as you guys know, in the scope world. So I was good for a few years, and then I got traded to Philadelphia Eagles. That was the Super Bowl year that Jim Schwartz was our defensive coordinator that year. It was a really fun year, and now he's actually back in Tennessee as of about a week ago, which is fun to see. But we had a great team that year, but I just started feeling pain, and I went to the doctors and got a CT scan, and they saw that I had a I think a 15 millimeter defect in my articular cartilage, chondral cartilage surfaces. I'm very educated because I'm
You're doing
around
pretty well, man. Your
Dr.
vocabulary is
Cole.
perfect. Yeah.
So yeah, and that's when it kind of started giving me issues. And during that process, I love your pup. During that process,
Hey, what Mike's referring to is we're on a Zoom call and I'm watching Steve's dog come up and lick him while he's trying.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. He's a cute dog, Steve. What is it, a poodle?
Australian Labradoodle.
It's a pretty dog.
Thank
nice.
Let us know if he has anything to say.
you. Wait from the bark, so I'm getting ready to hit the mute mic every second here.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but
Mike.
you know, Mike.
But I went all over the country.
Yeah.
Though. I went down to Boston. I went to Pittsburgh to see the team doctor in Pittsburgh. Obviously Philadelphia guys. I reached back out to University of Michigan and my Michigan contacts, and I was pointed to Dr. Cole after speaking with pretty much all of them, and that's how I found him.
Steve, I know you're going to ask another question. Go ahead.
No, Brian. Take me through what Mike got pretty detailed there with some technical stuff, and I always like to educate and Mike, that was pretty good. You sound like a doctor, but I always like to dumb it down for our listeners and myself. You talk about bucket something, and Dr. Cole, go through what. Explain some of that.
Yeah, and the first thing is Mike is very intelligent and is an active participant in his care, and that's important when you're dealing with complicated issues. I think there's a basic paradigm that is fascinating when you're dealing with athletes, Steve, because if we can't get them better, they're essentially unemployable, right? And in the real world office setting, when a patient comes in with a joint problem, they typically come to us because they have pain and then associated dysfunction. And it could be just activities of daily living. You just remember your shoulder was affecting your golf game and so forth, but you're not making a living playing golf. So the difference is that this is the burden and obligation and expectation is when you're dealing with an athlete is that he or she is coming in with the hope and maybe expectation that whatever they do will deliver their ability to get back to play. What I've learned in situations that relates to cartilage, so Mike was talking about in his knee, he had one of the most common injuries in football. He tore his meniscus. I mean, it's a commodity thing. Meniscal tears happen all the time. And he ended up having his meniscus removed, and he actually did well initially. He got some more playtime out of removing his meniscus, and then things got bad again. And the meniscus, as you know, is that C-shaped cartilage in the knee that sort of protects. It sits between the femur and the tibia, the thigh bone, and the shin bone. And it when it's missing in some people, people can go on to develop arthritis or change in the cartilage, and then they get pain. And Mike, if you don't mind, just real quick, how much did you weigh when you were at your prime?
Yeah, I was about 295.
Yeah, so every pound that we carry above our knee, we're sort of built like champagne glasses, upside down, is about 5 to 7 times magnified at the knee. So that's why we use weight loss as a treatment for people who have symptomatic arthritis. But that's not a possibility in a guy like you. You're not 295 of adipose or fat tissue. You're 295 of muscle. So that's how you're built, and so you pose a difficult treatment challenge because not only are you playing a collision sport, you're a big guy in a collision sport, and with a very high, a significant amount of force. So, Steve, when we're making decisions, these people come in and say, "Look, there's 2 buckets. There's do you have problems with activities of daily living, right?" And that's something we do really well with. Like if a person comes in and has a cartilage problem, we say, "I can't walk for prolonged distance. I can't get on an elliptical. I can't do a bike. I really just want to stay fit." So when that happens, we say, look, given your situation, we think, for example, doing a cartilage transplant, fixing this cartilage hole in your knee, or doing something that's called a realignment procedure where we actually literally cut the bone to straighten it so there's less load going across the joint. So it's like they're less active, but you don't get rid of the problem. You just reduce the load across it. We say if you're having problems with activities of daily living, you have a chance to do really well. 75% of people who come in for that type of procedure say, thank you very much, I'm satisfied. But then when you add to the equation, they say, not only do you want to have proven some activities of daily living, I want to actually get back to a professional sport to earn a living, and I want my career to be maintained or extended. That's where the gray zone and the margin comes in, because we can do great with low-level activities or intermediate-level activities, but when you take someone who's like Mike, who's almost 300 pounds, playing as a professional athlete in the NFL, we are not as predictably able to squeeze out that response or that return. So you make decisions based on really a basic thing, Steve. We say, look, if you did not have, number one, do you have problems with activities of daily living? The answer is yes. I can say, I think we'll do a good job. I'm going to get you some return on your investment, if you will, if you decide to fix your knee in this case. Then the second question is, if I told you it was safe to continue playing, knowing what you have in your knee, but it's not unsafe and the disease won't predictably progress, you might get increase in symptoms, can you play your sport? And if the answer is no, then you have that discussion that says, look, you're telling me the only way you could play is to get a reduction in pain with an associated improvement in function. We're going to have to do something if that's what you want to do. But you need to understand that our ability and predictability to deliver is not a foregone conclusion given the kind of athlete you are. So I just want to set the stage because I think he presents a common in our practice in our world, but not in the main world, because the decision making for him was very different. He was unemployable unless he could play. Mike, you were unable to play your sport at that time, and you knew that if you didn't try something, that would be your only chance. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, spot on. And I was willing to make a commitment to the treatment plan and try to move forward with that. But yeah, you're spot on with that.
Yeah. So Steve, what he had what a lot of these athletes have is he had a cartilage defect in his femur, so he was missing cartilage. And he had malalignment. Malalignment means he was bow-legged. So every time he would heel strike, put load on through his foot, the weight would transfer to the inner side of his knee where his defect or cartilage problem was. So it compounds the situation. So you take 295 pounds and you put the majority on the inner side of the knee where the problem is. Every time he does something in an exertion, it hurts. So his treatment was a procedure called an osteotomy, where we literally cut the tibia, put a plate on it to straighten it. And the reason we straighten it is that every time he heel strikes, his body, the body forces don't fall towards the inside, but they actually go towards the middle or the outside of the knee where the knee is healthy. So you trick the knee, if you will, to see less load. And at the same time, we try to fix the biology, which is to put a plug of bone and cartilage from a donor. And I think on this podcast, we have JRF as one of our sponsors. We obtain that plug from JRF. It's a fresh osteochondral allograft, and we put it into the femur. And he was also missing some meniscus too, but the challenge with a collision athlete is to do a meniscus transplant becomes a little less predictable. So we have to make really hard decisions. Like Mike, I remember meeting you the first time. It was probably an hour visit. I think you were then with your either girlfriend or then fiance, now married and about to have a child, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. September 5th.
Yeah, so life just moved beautifully along for you, and I'm really happy for you.
Appreciate
but it's a long discussion about decision-making of how to do this. And then we use stem cells at the same time, just to maybe, reduce inflammation and improve graft incorporation and so forth. But truly an uphill battle for him, and had already had a number of surgeries. I mean, you had your shoulder, you had your number 3 or 4 surgeries maybe before I saw you for your knee. Mm-hmm. But Steve, does that sort of give you a flavor of what he went through and how the decision-making goes?
Yeah, quite detailed. Wow. But I want to ask Mike now on the, almost wrapping this up here, but on the mental side then, Mike, what goes through your mind when you're with an NFL team and you couldn't get back to play with the Titans and you're trying to make that decision, and that's your career right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It was tough, really tough, because the sport I played my whole life, something that I was committed to, something that gave me a blessing to make a great living. And Jim Schwartz, he was giving me the veteran treatment, which is the red carpet rollout treatment, which you got to work almost 10 years of seasons worth to get. But he really liked me and wanted to take care of me, give me less load so I can make it through the season. But, the decision was tough, but it was made easier because 2 years prior, I had been thinking when I had the meniscus before I met Dr. Cole, that this isn't going to last forever. I mean, I was kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and I wasn't ignorant. I mean, it was going to last. Even if I had 0 serious injuries, I mean, I wasn't going to play football for 15, 20 years. It's just impossible. So I went to Miami and got my MBA during that process. And when I hit this crossroad, I had already set up the work years ago, and it made it better for me transition wise. And I had a plan and I knew where I wanted to go, and it made it easier.
Mike, when you think back to when you were a player, and this is something that I spent a lot of time in the training room, and some of these athletes now are my kids' age and even younger. So I'm in a different age and stage in life where I look at these young people in a different way and have the opportunity to really speak to them. And the one thing that I think professional athletes often suffer from because they start so early in their sports. And the good thing about you is you were not a single sport athlete. And I'm thinking you had a good infrastructure, just stereotypically anyway, at home, because whenever I see multi-sport athletes, they usually have good role models and so forth that get them in that direction. Not always the case, but that's often the case because it has to provide opportunities for you. And I think the thing that I've seen, unfortunately, too much is just the absence of good role models. Young people all of a sudden are flooded with a tremendous amount of money. They have agents, presumably, to guide them. They may not have a familial experience in what it is to sort of predict the future and plan for the future. And like you said, this is never forever. Nothing's forever, but certainly playing in the NFL is not forever. It's far from it. So you have a very limited number of years to earn an income and set yourself up to do something afterwards. There's not a lot of guys who just finish and don't do anything else. You have to have a life after the NFL. And I guess the question I have, and it's a long question, but it's something I think about a lot, and I try to actually help even when I'm in the training room because I really enjoy getting to know these players. You're there so much, so you have a lot of downtime. So it affords an amazing opportunity to build interpersonal relationships, and not because I'm a fan. It has nothing to do with that. It's just these are human beings, much like my kids, who I really enjoy the opportunity to sort of hear what they think and so forth, and maybe even provide a little bit of, I guess for lack of a better word, fatherly advice, but not when it's not solicited. What was lacking? What do you see lacking in the training room, on the field, amongst these young athletes who are coming out of college? When it comes to managing their lives outside of football?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would come to mind is just having an expansive view on the world. And when you're in those four walls in that football facility, especially at the NFL level, they don't want you thinking about anything but football. They want you to eat, breathe, sleep football because that's what they're paying you for. But they've incorporated these player development guys on staff because they know that it's important. I mean, my man who owns the Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks. Why am I blanking on his name?
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban, yes. So when he bought the Mavericks, the thing that he did first was he poured money into the organization to develop his players. He's like, if these guys aren't better guys off the field and know how to manage their lives, then I'm not going to get the best product on the court. And he was the first guy, in the NBA years ago when he bought the team to do that. And then now you see the NBA, all these teams have that. The NFL's incorporated it because you have to do that for these guys because what happens 5 years down the road when you're hearing all these stories that the guys are broke, they got nothing to show for it. What does that do for your brand? What does that do for the business that you're running? If everyone that leaves your business years later is, on the streets, you even hear sometimes. So
sure.
You got to talk to these guys about the things that matter off the field and make sure they're aware of it and they're not ignorant to the facts. So yeah.
Tell us.
And that's why I do what I do because I give them that playbook because I've been through it. And yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask you. To finish up. Tell me what you're doing now to sort of give back, because I know that's one of your, where you are now in your career. What are you doing to give back to sort of satisfy that need?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for a long time, I had a coach when I was a freshman at Michigan that I'm still really close with. He taught me that if you pour into people more than you pour into yourself, you're going to get what you want in the future. You're going to get, good things are going to happen. And the things I've experienced and have had the pleasure to learn, and the people that I've met and the network that I've created and all these things that I've accumulated, friends and network and experiences, are assets to people that I run into. And if I can give those assets to people to help improve them and give them, allow them to have that chess player mindset, they're able to make 6 moves ahead of time and know what's going to come, then that's a great thing. And I'm doing my part in the world, and I'm able to affect people's lives in my own personal way. And being able to educate people on money is something that I've learned through this process. Obviously, I experienced it. I saw guys would keep game checks in the locker, in their lockers. And I'd say, like, hey, what's that sack of checks? Why are you keeping it? He's like, well, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to put it. I had a teammate of mine when I was a second year in the NFL. He's like, yeah, the guy had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in his locker because he just didn't know where to put it. He still had that mattress money mentality because he didn't know. So That happens all the time. And that, I mean, I run into people that aren't professional athletes that I work with that have, $100,000 sitting in a checkings account, savings account, because I don't trust the banks. I don't think, I just want to hold on to it, where you're actually losing value on your dollar as you keep it in your savings account. I'll
tell you just a quick funny story reminded me of when the first year I took care of the Bulls, it was like 16 years ago. We were in the playoffs, and I didn't know this existed. So, Steve, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but they get per diems, right? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, we got it too. And I
used to get it too, right?
Yeah, $105 back then. It's a lot more now.
I don't know if it is. We haven't been in the playoffs in a couple of years, so I'm not sure what it is right now. But that's the only time I would travel is during the playoffs, right? So, Mike, you guys have per diems too, I imagine, right?
Yeah, every week.
Oh, yeah. And is it cash?
Cash, yep.
Yeah. So a per diem is to cover your expenses, your food, whatever, So not a lot of money, but it's just something probably in your union or whatever your player contract that you have. And it's probably uniform across the sport, the NFL. So, Steve, I get on the plane and I get an envelope with my name on it. And I had no idea what it was. I thought it was just itinerary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm on the plane. I'm doing work as usual on my computer, and we fly with the team. And I just put the envelope in my pocket behind the airplane seat. Never to think about it again. Like 4 days later, I don't remember.
Did you leave it?
Oh yeah, I left it. I didn't even know what it was. And then it was a 4-day trip, so it was not. It was kind of a fun amount of money to have. And just given to me. And I think it was John Ligmanowski, who was the equipment manager. He's like, Doc, do you want this? I'm like, I don't even know what it is. I forgot I was even give it to me. I open it up and there's like, a couple $100 bills in it. I'm like, God, this is a great windfall. But I didn't even know that whole thing existed. It just made me think about guys sitting in, it's not $100,000. I can tell you that much, but I can see it. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. And they just put it in their locker and we'll just keep it there. It's safe in my locker.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Yeah, it's up to the trainer of the team. It's his job to go to the bank before every road trip. And the Bulls sometimes had 13-day road trips. We were traveling with the Bulls, and it was 105 or 120 per day. So guys would get over $1,000.
In cash, which seems to have a different feeling.
It was all cash.
Yeah,
and it wasn't to pay for your hotel was taken care of, and most of your, but it was for your other meals and incidentals and stuff. At the hotel. But it was great stuff. So let me, before we say goodbye to Mike Martin here, what's the best way to treat your pain? If it's to start with physical therapy, you're on the right track. Same Athletico therapists who work with world-class athletes and professional dancers can transform your pain before it progresses to something worse. Schedule your free assessment at athletico.com. It all starts with Athletico. So, Mike, quickly, as we say goodbye, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? You're a money manager. You had a great plan. You got a great head on your shoulders. You're a former NFL player. You got some great stories, I know. But you're trying to help people, and that's most importantly. So what's the best way of people? Where do you live, and where do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm based out of Detroit, Michigan. I am down in Miami working a lot as well, but I'm licensed in every state in the United States except New York. It's hard to do a lot of things in New York, as we know. But I am on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Go Mike Martin at GOMIKEMARTIN. And my firm, wealthstrategiesfinancialgroup.com. You can find me on there as well. So I'm glad to help. I'm here as a resource. I tell people, use me as a sounding board. If you got questions, throw them at me. I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Mike. Continued success, and so happy you found Dr. Cole, and appreciate you being on Sports Medicine Weekly.
Yeah, and best to your bride and your upcoming baby, and please stay in touch. Let me know how you're doing, okay?
I will, Brian. Thanks, man. Nice to meet you, Steve.
Guys. Take care.
Appreciate it, Mike. You too. Great stuff from Mike Martin. And before we say goodbye, Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, MOR, is among the international leaders in musculoskeletal health. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush physicians are all faculty in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery at Rush University Medical Center, which is currently ranked number 5 in orthopedics by U.S. World News and Reports. Founded in 2003, Midwest Orthopedics at Rush is comprised of internationally renowned orthopedic and spine surgeons who pioneer the latest advances in technology and surgical techniques to improve the lives and activity levels of patients around the world. The physicians at MOR are proud to be the official team physicians for the Chicago Bulls, Chicago White Sox, and Chicago Fire Soccer Club, and also the Joffrey Ballet. Visit rushortho.com to learn more. Schedule an appointment at one of the Midwest Orthopedics at Rush's convenient Chicago and West Suburban Dislocations. Many thanks to our guest, Mike Martin, former NFL player, also played at the University of Michigan, for Dr. Brian Cole. My name is Steve Cashel. Our website is sportsmedicineweekly.com, and we will talk with you next time for our next Sports Medicine Weekly podcast. Have a great day, everybody.
Tell him, Tom. Tell him.